Hello, good morning everyone. It's great to see that you are joining with immense interest to our webinar today. And I see that we have more participants joining as we speak. Maybe we take a minute to give them some time to join. We have kept our webcams on so that you can see us. We will be presenting to you today. All right, perfect. As we speak, the number of attendees are joining. That is good. We are online and let's begin. Good morning, everyone. Once again, thank you for your interest to join the webinar today. Welcome to the webinar on disruptive data plus platform business model for automated driving. It is a part of L3Pilot project. I'm Sri from TNO, and I work on disruptive innovations on mobility as a consultant. I'm joined today by my colleague Frank. Frank, I leave the floor to you.
Good morning, all. Welcome also on behalf of myself on this webinar. I will moderate and facilitate Sri in this presentation. I will explain a little bit the rules of the webinar, so you can keep your microphones and webcams off, and we can use the chat for questions, specifically for understanding, questions of understanding, and this will be reviewed by us and plugged in when needed. So thank you for obeying those rules. That will help us to keep the time. We will also use Mentimeter for polling your inputs, and in the next slide we will use Mentimeter. So please go to menti.com and enter the code 317685. You can use a separate screen for that or your mobile phone. So go to menti.com and enter the code 317685. I will go now to menti.com. And the question is, to which stakeholder group do you belong? We have set up a list of stakeholders into this business model, and we'd like to understand to what extent we have potential participants of such business model in the audience. And it's also a warm-up question. All right, it seems we have quite a diverse audience representing the different angles of this stakeholder. I'm really happy with that. Currently 9 participants entering, so I'll wait a little bit more on that. But at least it seems that most of you have been able to find the Mentimeter. We will use the Mentimeter later on in this presentation also for the evaluation of the business model. Okay. Go back to the presentation. Yes. Okay. What are we going to do today? We will share one of the 4 L3Pilot business models for stimulating demand in automated driving. So in the project, we did literature search and observations in industry, identifying 4 business models. And today we will present exactly one. This will be done by Sri. We want to get your views on this business model by means of a structured evaluation. And we also would like to raise your interest in participating in subsequent interviews, which we call expert talks. So the purpose of today is to explain the business model, and then we will invite some of you to participate in the follow-up interviews, for which you can register after this webinar, and we hope that you do. Okay, now it's time to give the word back to Sri.
Thank you, Frank. So in the next couple of minutes, in the next 25 minutes to be precise, we are going to be talking about the L3Pilot project. And then we will discuss about the 4 business models that we have identified and why we chose the Data Plus platform business model as one among the 4 business models. We will dive deep into these Data Plus platform business model, especially today, and followed by the evaluation questions, which we will ask to you through the Mentimeter again at the end. Just for the sake of connectivity, I will be stopping the webcam now so that you have a full screen into the presentation slides. So L3Pilot project is one of the biggest EU projects where cross-border testing of level 3 and level 4 automation is conducted throughout the entire scope of Europe. It is Horizon 2020 project. It is one of the largest with more than 34 partners, more than 10 countries participating in it, more than 100 cars piloting around cross-border testing and testing a lot of automated driving functions. Apart from the automated driving functions, there is also an important task of presenting and coming up with business models for the OEMs. And that is what we have been busy with in the last 1 year. We have identified 4 business models for the scope of 2030. And these 4 business models may not be are not only the only business models that we can envision. There are also other types of business models that could come around. So we have identified robo-taxis, in-car services, mobility as a service, and as well as Data Plus platform. We identified these business models through literature study, by studying a lot of papers, by conducting market and industry scan, and also based on the trends like digitalization, where will it be in the year 2030? We have discussed about these 4 business models with the L3Pilot consortium, where more than 10 OEMs are participating. And we have come across with these. So the Data Plus platform, why do we want to have this as one of the business models? What is the incentive? We know that there are smarter and intelligent vehicle development very much underway. L3 level of automation is already there, but also level 4 and level 5 are fast approaching. While these developments can be applied to many areas to solve the efficiency in transportation, there are also some concerns. Imagine, for every higher level of automation we go, there is enormous amount of data generated. Every sensor in a car is a data source. How many sensors do we have in a car, and how many cars are running on the road as a fleet? So imagine how much data we can collect from it. It is enormous. Now, that indeed raises a question, which is, what do you do with so much data? We know that data is gold. Data is an asset. So how can we create value for sustained business models for the OEM? To answer this, we also have to be aware of certain challenges. For example, regarding privacy, regarding data sharing, regarding security, and etc. Through the next couple of slides, we will explain you about the business model, how we see it, and then look into the challenges as well that we see together with this business model. Frank, I leave the stage to you to explain about the basics model.
Yes. Some of you are maybe familiar with business model Canvas. In this project, we chose to use a different way of expressing a business model, and this is the so-called base-X approach, and it's based on service dominant logic. That is meaning that we put centric the co-created value in use. In other words, this is the experience that multiple parties are together co-creating for and with the targeted user. So, and we use a so-called spider diagram to show what this business model looks like. So, in the center is the business model name and the co-created value in use. On around 2 o'clock, there's the user, that's the say target for this business model, and this user gets and contributes value from this business model. At 3 o'clock, there's the focal organization. This is basically the organization that ensures the integration of the propositions of other actors. Also, this focal organization contributes value and gets value from this business model. As from 4 o'clock until 12 o'clock, there are co-creating actors who also contribute value to the central proposition and also get benefits from this. Sri will now explain the Data Plus platform in this format.
Thank you, Frank. Now, I'm going to use exactly the same format that Frank just explained. So let's start with one of the key actors in this business model. They are the drivers and travelers. They are basically the users. They play a key role because they drive the demand. But not only that, they are also the source of data. Basically, the preferences and the usage of the vehicle or transportation of any kind of service. And they are also the consumers of new services, which basically drives the demand. The next actor, which is the focal organization here, is the Data Plus platform service provider. Now, this is a focal organization, so they obviously play a key role in this business model. The key task is to provide a secure and integrated platform and marketplace for enriched and aggregated data, which means they will be involved in contractual arrangements and serving as a one-stop shop for easy access to data. The next actor we have are the service providers. So we envision many service providers to be able to access the Data Plus platform to design new applications and services for the consumers based on their needs, based on their personal preferences. So these kind of service providers, they can basically design and create appropriate services for the users, for example, in the field of mobility as a service, for car sharing operations, for maintaining the demand and the amount of cars or vehicles needed in a certain area, but also to provide, for example, in-car entertainment services as we go on higher levels of automation. The next actor we have are one of the data source points. So that is the map and content provider. We know that the mapping is quite useful with regards to positioning and to determine where the location is and what happens with that location. And obviously there is a lot of data that is gained by that. For example, which route is taken and where is the vehicle at a particular moment of time. And similarly are the real-time information from the car and the context data providers. So how does the car drive? How much acceleration or how much speed is used where? The next is data content and aggregator. So we have quite a lot of data. This needs to be aggregated, anonymized, and also enriched to get the information and value out of the data. And of course, following the GDPR rules. To make sure that the data is communicated properly from the vehicle and from the applications to the servers, we need a very reliable telco, a telecom operator who provides a secure connectivity for the transmission of data. And of course, customers and third-party service providers such as digital marketing services, they help the service providers to design new services and bringing the service to the market, especially to the consumers, to make it workable and to help the consumers enjoy a seamless and an enjoyable travel experience. Now, the co-created value of all of these actors together in this business model is to create a one-stop data shop, which means it is to be able to have a secure car and user data marketplace, which is anonymized and can be used to once again create a high level of service back to the consumers. Now, this of course comes with a couple of challenges. We discussed about this business model with the OEMs, with the consortiums, the L3Pilot consortium, and we identified through a workshop a couple of challenges, and I'm highlighting the top 3 of the challenges here with you. The first one is the ownership of data, one of the most commonly asked questions. Who owns the data? Will that create a monopoly, or how should this be organized? The second is a technical and financial challenge. Technical challenge being, how can we handle real-time data? Because it's a huge amount of data. Where can we store it? And the second is the financial challenge, which bears with the high connectivity costs. How can we deal around this when we look into the entire business model? And third is regarding the structure of the business model itself, which means every organization needs to perform faultlessly. Even if there is one small gap or one small mistake by any of the organization, it could undermine the entire business model. So these are the challenges that we identified, and I look forward if you have any questions regarding this business model. Frank, I believe you're muted.
Yes. You can enter questions for understanding in the chat box. I will briefly display the business model again. And check. Okay. We have one interesting question, Sri. How do you define a service in this business model? So we have the service providers at say 4 o'clock. What type of service is this?
So that's a great question. So basically the services can be anything ranging from providing up-to-date information to a seamless travel experience for the users. It could also be MaaS, which means it doesn't necessarily have to be something regarding ownership of the vehicle, but just the way how people can travel. So the services can be really broad. It can also be an entertainment service that where a user can enjoy or be entertained during the travel, during their travel, basically. Does that answer the question? I hope it does. If not, please give us a question.
Yes. Thank you, Sri. I see some more questions. Okay. How do you deal with international rules and regulations in such a business model?
This is indeed very, very relevant question. And that obviously needs to be taken into account. I completely agree with this question as well, because the GDPR is quite active in EU, for instance. But when we look into the international level, how can we make sure that the same GDPR regulations is also applied on an international level? Also to take into account if other countries have different regulations, how can we meet them? That is indeed a very good point raised, and I presume one of that should also be included in as one of the tasks for one of the actors here in this business model.
Okay, thank you, Sri. We will now engage again in Mentimeter for the evaluation of the business model. We go to Mentimeter again using code 317685. Yes. So go to menti.com using the code 317685. And we have 4 evaluation questions for this business model. The first one, the statement, the business model is definitely feasible, meaning we can actually create this service, we can actually do it. The second is the viability. The business model is definitely viable, meaning we don't go broke while executing this business model. The third one, the business model is definitely desirable. People want it. It adds a real value, and this is a good way to create that. And the fourth one is the question, my organization is definitely interested in participating in the Data Plus platform business model. So we see some variations there on the different dimensions of this evaluation. So I see that people tend to agree on the feasibility, that it can be done. The viability, there seems to be some discussion. People disagree, people do agree. We're curious to learn why you think that would be the case in the upcoming questions. And the desirability, there's also some distribution of preferences on that. And there are parties really interested in participating in such a business model. Okay. I will leave the poll open for, say, 30 more seconds to gather the last responses. It's quite a complex question that we're asking. Sri, is there any comment you can give on this outcome?
Hi, Frank. It is very interesting to see the ratings. Let's put it that way, and also very interesting distribution on the viability, where it appears to have 2 groups. One group believing that it is viable and the other believing it may not be viable.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That would be very interesting to explore. What are the differences or what are the arguments there?
Well, maybe the following question could help us understand that.
Yeah.
The following question is, voting is closed. That's not good. Open voting. Okay, I'm sorry for this technical imperfection. The question we are asking is, what are weak points of the Data Plus platform business model, and what improvements would you suggest? So Sri mentioned some challenges already, and we're looking for your opinions on what are weak points and how to improve that. So we have response, data reliability, start small and then expand. Okay, so the suggestion is to start with a smaller setup and to control the data really well and then grow. Second contribution is the user data is leaving the automotive sphere.
I fully understand the concern here. That is true. But also it is the data that the automotive industry is comfortable with that leaves the automotive sphere.
Okay. Another concern is entered. There's a huge amount of data, really big data, a challenge to analyze it properly. And another one, including relation to travel planning. Okay. I think, do you have a response to that, Sri?
Sure, especially on the arguments related to travel planning. It is indeed the main focus that this helps in providing up-to-date service for the mobility as a service platform. Now, MaaS could be underrated, it could be hyped, but the key idea there is that if the service is able to provide the most efficient route from a location A to B, not based on distance, not based on speed, but the most efficient, then that by default also includes the travel planning feature.
Okay. There are two additional interesting topics. So what is the public road authority perspective to this? And also there's a mention of white spaces in Europe, so with lack of connectivity. And yeah, how does this platform, business model respond to that?
Great questions, great questions. I first of all really appreciate for such very good questions. Let's start with the public and road authority perspective. At least in the Netherlands, I'm not completely aware how it works for every country, but at least in the Netherlands, where I am from, the road authority are quite open to such kind of data, to such kind of information, where they basically integrate and use this data into their planning and route models, so that they have much more informed decisions on where, how, and when the roadworks can be performed, and how can it create the least disruption possible. So they are very much on board, and we see them as a customer to this business model.
Great. I see there's still more inputs coming in. I'd like to thank the audience for contributing this. This is really helpful. And this is bringing me also to the next question, or basically an invitation. So based on your responses, based on what you have learned about our view on this business model, the question is, are you interested in participating in an expert interview with us? Provisional planning would be like in the upcoming weeks, but we will of course schedule this with you if you're interested. So if you can enter in the form in Mentimeter your name, phone number, and email address. This is only for planning purposes. This will not be shown to the full audience, so you can enter it privately. Alternatively, you can write your name in the question box. I'll leave some time for this. Please fill out, because we are really interested in discussing this business model in more detail with you. I leave the question open a little bit longer, so you can continue to enter your names, but I will move to the closing of this session with respect of time. So today we discussed the Data Plus platform as a one of a series of 4 business models that we developed in L3Pilot. These business models were meant to drive the demand for automated driving in 2030. And next week there will be the last coffee webinar based on mobility as a service, and that will be given by me and then supported by Sri. So we change roles next week. We hope to see you next week in this webinar, and timer's off. Yes. So thank you. Hope to see you next week, and hope to see you also in the expert talks, in the interviews. Thank you very much. Sri, maybe you can say something.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your participation and for your involvement throughout this business model and throughout this webinar. We also see a lot more suggestions and questions which we received for the previous question, which we would like to answer, come back to you through your email, if we have your email addresses, of course. And indeed, I hope we see you next week and also for the interviews. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.